so much for signing back in and clicking on our newsletter this week. This week, I want to talk to you about being afraid. And I'm sure, just like myself, some of you are having that same feeling. And I want to first start with the book of Matthew, and it's in chapter 14, verse 27, when Jesus says this. He says, "But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, 'Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid.'" And in this story that in the book right there, in the book of Matthew, it was where Jesus was just feeling worn out. He was processing the loss of his cousin John, and he really just wanted to get away from the crowds and be alone. And so he was traveling, and the people were coming after him. They were hungry, and so he's like, "I'll feed you." So he took 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and he fed the multitudes. But then after that, he was like trying to get away and getting some time. And he went up into the mountain to pray. And so I believe that Jesus knows what we're feeling when we live between that tension of work and balancing what we can, and we can relate to him from this crisis that we're in today, and kind of trying to problem solve at the same time. And maybe this sounds familiar to you. Maybe you're finding yourself glued to the news, and then you check the news, or you're checking your updates on Yahoo, and you're heading into work, and you have this fear of this invisible virus, and you're trying to balance the whole thing, and you're like, "I just need to get away. What is this fear?" And so what we see in that boat scene there, where the disciples were afraid, right? The waves were coming down and the wind was blowing, and Jesus was walking on the water. No one had ever seen anything like that, and they were just full of fear and terror. And that's when he spoke to them, and he said, "Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid." You see, it's hard to recognize Jesus when you can't see clearly in the dark before dawn. And so I too, like I was saying earlier, we find ourselves afraid in these times. We're afraid of not knowing. We're afraid of not seeing. We're afraid of our losses. We're afraid of making hard leadership decisions. But I want to give you this hope. The waves will stop, because that's what happened with the disciples. The waves stopped because fear comes in waves. And so let me ask you, who needs to hear these words? Simple, 3 words. Do not be afraid. That's 4. You are not alone in your fears. Jesus was worn out. You and I may be feeling that same thing under those same circumstances, because the weight of this sustained grief that we're feeling is real, everyone. It's real. But we don't have to be afraid in it, because it is I, right? And that's what he says. It is I. Take courage. Do not be afraid. You're not in this alone. God bless you. Bye-bye.